Hey everyone, welcome back to Papa's Workshop. Recently, I was asked to make some marquee letters for an upcoming event. And today I want to show you exactly how I designed the letters and then be able to cut them out and make the marquee letters. Now on these letters, I'll back up a little bit. These letters are actually 2 feet tall. Now, when I was doing the research, there was a lot of sites out there that had all kind of huge, gigantic marquee letters. But I was asked to make 2-foot tall letters, so that's what I did. And I designed them in the VCarve Pro and cut them out on the CNC machine. Now, one of the things that I did on the back side, I made this recessed so that it would protect the wiring. And that's something I just have not seen in any of the marquee letters that I was looking at. But I wanted that protection. That way, if it lays flat, you're not going to damage the wires. And then on the front side, this is raised up above the height of the bulbs. And that way, if it does fall over, yeah, you may break a couple of bulbs just from the shock of hitting the floor, but it's not going to just shatter all of the different bulbs, because this will protect it. Now, I'm really not going to be selling the plans as you see on so many different sites. And the reason being is I'm going to show you exactly how I designed these letters in the VCarve Pro and then cut them out. Now, what I'm going to do for the sake of time is to be able to create one letter, and it's the letter D. And the reason I chose that letter is it has all of the components to be able to make any other letter. Because the left side of the D creates, in essence, an L and many other different letters. And on the right side, you have the angles, and that's the same as creating the O and so many of the other letters. So that has all the different components. So if you know how to make that one letter, you can make all the letters of the alphabet. And in the sake of saving a lot of time, I think that is going to be the best way to do it. Now, should you have questions, please reach out to me, ask the questions, leave me a comment, and I'll be happy to be able to answer any questions that you have. So let's get started on designing the letter D. I'm going to create a new file and show you exactly how I created these letters. I'm going to start off with this being a single-sided. Now on the x-axis, this is going to be 15 inches. I found that worked out real well. And then on the y-axis, it's going to be 23 inches. The reason it's 23 inches is that piece of wood I'm going to put on the top and the bottom, that's 1/2 inch material, and that will give me my 24 inches. And that way I can work within this space and it will work out real well, and it helps to give me some guidelines. Now I'm going to be using the material surface for this, and we're going to use the bottom left-hand corner. So I'll just click OK. Now the first thing I want to do is let's just design the letter D, because that's a real good letter to be able to use as a basis for this. So I'm going to come over, and the first thing is I want a guideline at the 1 inch mark. And I'm just going to right click and I'm going to put in 1 inch. And then we'll hit OK. So now I'm going to have these letters where they're going to be 3 inches wide. So I'm going to come up here to the rectangle tool and make a rectangle. And I'm going to set this at, well, on the x-axis, 9 1/4. That should be fine. But the most important part is the 3 inches. And that's going to be on my y-axis. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to slide it right over here. And I'm going to keep that one right there, and I'll show you why in a moment. The next one I want to set up now is make another rectangle. And let's just make it all the way down. And let's get the size. X-axis will be 3 inches. And on the y-axis, let's just make it, well, just make it 22 inches. That'll be fine. And we'll hit apply. You can see the only thing that really counts is the width, the 3 inches. Because I'm going to show you, we're going to bring that right over here, and we're going to drop it in place. Now I want this to be this bottom left-hand corner, or this left side to be right on that point. So what I can do is just click on the rectangle and come up here to the spacing for this anchor point. And you can see I have it at this anchor on the left side. That's perfectly fine. And on the x-axis it's 1.0347. I'm just going to put that at 1.0 and put apply. And that's going to move it right over to that guideline. That's really all I need. Now we'll close out of that. And then I'm going to take this one. We'll slide it right over here, and I want to have this reference right at the top left-hand corner. So again, I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool. I want the anchor point to be here at the top, and I want the x-axis to be at 0, and I want the y-axis to be at 23. And we'll hit apply and close. So you can see what that does. That's beginning to form this portion of that letter. Now I can also take and do the same thing again. We'll make another rectangle. Again, I want this to be at 3 inches. And you notice I'm not too concerned about the y-axis being a little bit longer. That's okay. But what I'm going to do is take this and slide it all the way down to the bottom corner. And I'm going to reference it again. Using the rectangle tool, I want the anchor point to be the bottom left corner, and we're going to set this at 0 and 0. And we'll hit apply and close. So the next thing is to do the same thing again. Make another rectangle. And we'll make this now on the x-axis 3 inches, and on the y-axis, yeah, that's fine. 19.76, that's good. We'll just hit apply, close it, and we're going to bring that over here in this spot. And I want to align it on the right-hand side this time. And on the x-axis, we'll put this right there on either one of these 2 points, and we'll have this at 15. And that should be fine. So we'll just hit apply and close. Now I want this to be able to overlap to this point. So I need to modify this one. And instead of being at the 9 1/4, we'll just make this one 14 inches. On the x-axis, we'll hit apply. And you can see that moved across this way. That's okay. Whoops. I'm going to put my anchor point here. I want this to be 0. And I want this to be at the 23, which it is, and we'll hit apply. Now I have this point. That point is going to be important. I'm going to do the same thing down here. Let's go back and modify this one. The anchor point is going to be 0. And we're going to have it 0, 0. And I want to be able to have this at, we'll just make it the 13 inches this time on the x-axis. You can see again, all I'm trying to do is create that center point that I need where it intersects. So now I have this portion of the D. This is my intersect line. That's what I want. Now to be able to clear this up a little bit, to make it a little bit simpler, we're going to come over here to our cut tool, and we're going to cut out some of this. I don't need this part. I don't need this. Don't need this or this part. So now you can see how that letter D is starting to shape. New rectangle. We're going to come in here again. We're just going to make a rectangle that's about 10 1/2. Of course, we need to have it 3 inches wide. And we'll hit apply, close. Now on this, I want to be able to use this tool right here and rotate it 45 degrees. And I need to rotate it again. One more time, that will be good. So now I'm going to take this And I want this center point to be right on that center point. That is the key to this. That's why I wanted to have these points where they cross each other. So we'll get out of that. We'll make one more rectangle the same way. Again, the length doesn't really matter, but the y-axis, in this case, being the 3 inches, does. So we'll click on that. So there's my 3 inches. And now I'm going to rotate it again. And we'll put this in at 45. We'll hit apply, and that will be what I need. So we'll close it. We'll highlight this. We'll have that center point. I want to drag down input where it snaps right into that spot. All we need to do now is just clean up this section, and we have our letter D. So I'm going to use the trim tool, and I'm going to come in. I don't need this portion, don't need this, don't need that, or this. We can just, let's zoom in. We can cut this part out, and we can cut that out. We need that part. We don't need this. We don't need that. And that's looking real good. We'll do the same thing down here. We'll zoom in. And there is your letter D. We'll close out of the trim tool. We don't need the guideline. We'll get rid of that. So that's how easy it is to be able to make the letters. This is the same type of setup. If I was making the letter L, I would just bring this over and set it up exactly the same way. And this format right here is exactly how I make all of the different letters. As far as the circles, for the lights themselves, I just create a 1-inch circle, and then I close that out. Now, if you want to put the guidelines in, you can. And one of the things that I did is I used the guideline, and I put a guideline in right here at the halfway point. So I know that that was 23, so 21.5 is going to give me the center. Same thing over here. I want to be able to put this in. That would give me the center point here. And same thing down here. It would be 1.5 inches off of the bottom. So now I have the locations for the basic format for where I want this. Now this is 23 inches, so half of 23 is going to be 11.5. So I want to be able to bring a guideline down at 11.5. That puts it into the center. So now I can take, for an example, these circles, and I can start moving them over and let them snap in position. Now I can copy and paste if I want, but I can just have these drop in just like that, and I can put these all the way around exactly where I want. So I think you can see the idea on how I do this. We'll put in another one. So we'll just hit apply, close, drop down here at the bottom. It snaps into place. That works out real well. Now if I want to put the guideline in here, I can drag a guideline over here. This was 15 inches. So half of that is going to be the 13.5. So that's why I used the measurements that I did. It makes it real easy to be able to do the math. And then another circle. We'll hit create. We'll close it. And then I can just grab this and have it snap into that point. Now I also put one in between here. I put one into these areas, and I also put them in here. But this is getting a little bit repetitious. You can see how I do that. Off camera, I went ahead and put in the rest of the circles, and you can see I added some guidelines. And that way everything is aligned, going horizontal as well as vertical. These two that are on the diagonal are also lined up exactly into that 45-degree angle that we had made. So the letter D is now done. So the next thing, I'm going to delete all of the guidelines and I'll set up these toolpaths. With the guidelines removed, the next step is I want to group all of the circles. So I'm going to highlight this one, hold down the Shift key, and just select each one of the circles. Once I have all of them selected, I'm going to group them together. When I'm doing demonstrations such as this, I like using the icon. So I'm going to click on that icon, and that groups all of these together. I'm going to be using the profile toolpath for this. I'm going to set this up where it starts as 0. I will be cutting down a 1/2 inch. We're going to be using the 1/4 inch end mill, and I do not want to do 7 passes. I'm going to be conservative, and we're going to set this up on 4 passes. And I want these to cut on the inside. That way that 1 inch diameter will remain true. So that's cutting on the inside. And then don't need tabs, don't need anything else. And I can just come down here and set this up for any file that I want. I'm just going to say for the simple circle for this demonstration. And we'll hit calculate. And you can see how the toolpaths will be able to cut out those. So we'll close that. The next thing I want to do is be able to select this inside circle, because this right here needs to also cut on the inside. So I'm going to set this up the same way. All of this will remain the same. I do need to change the passes. We'll make that again 4 passes. And that's being very conservative. Everything else will remain the same. And I'm just going to name this inside. And we'll hit calculate. From here, we'll close that. This time, we're going to select the outside. Same profile toolpath. All of this is the same. We'll change this again to 4. Set passes, hit OK. This time I want this to cut on the outside. Can't forget that. And then I'll come down here and just label this outside. And we'll hit calculate. And that's the toolpaths. So with all of these selected, I'm going to reset the preview, and we'll select all the toolpaths, and you can see how it cuts, and that's exactly what I want. Now this format is going to be the same for every single letter that we're going to do. At this point, I'd close it. I want to be able to select all of these. Because we're using the same bit, I can actually come up here, and you can see all the toolpaths will be listed, and I can cut this out one time. One thing I forgot to do is put in the dog bones. Let's go back over to the design tab and put in the dog bones. To make these pieces fit together easier when we cut these on the miter saw, is you need to have the dog bones in here, because this will be a radius, and you really don't want that radius. So I'm going to come down here to the fillet toolpath. I want to be able to select the dog bone, and then I can come over, and you can see when that check mark, that will give me the indication that it'll be right where it needs to be. And all of these need to have the dog bones. So now all of the inside little corners have the dog bones. So let's go back over to the toolpath menu, and I'm going to hit recalculate for all of the toolpaths. So what I'm going to do is just come up here and select this icon, recalculate all of the different toolpaths, And now if you zoom in, you can see where the little dog bones will be able to be cut out. So that takes care of it. That's how to do the letters. And just to be able to show you real quick, see these little lines right there? That shows where the dog bone is being cut into it. So let's reset everything and we'll hit preview all the toolpaths. And you can see how that cuts out exactly what I want. Now I didn't put tabs in. It's up to you if you want to put in the tabs. In this case I didn't. So I can delete these to be able to show you exactly what it's going to look like. If I want to come in and delete these, I can do that also. But that's going to show you exactly how that letter is going to look. I started the CNC machine, and you can see the first toolpath that is cutting is the circles itself. Now it's going to go through and cut out all the circles to begin with. Now that all the circles are cut out, it's going to move and start that second toolpath, and that's going to cut out the inside portion of this letter D. Now just so you know, I didn't use the dust boot because I wanted you to be able to see exactly what's taking place. But as it finishes up the inside of this letter D, it will move to the outside. And I wanted you to be able to see exactly how we designed the letter in the VCarve Pro, and then how I took it out to the CNC machine and actually cut it out on the machine itself. In the next section, I want to take the opportunity to show you a little bit about the setup and how I keep the CNC machine organized and how I actually secure the project boards to the CNC machine. On the CNC machine, I put down a piece of the 1/2-inch foam to begin with, and that will act as an auxiliary wasteboard, and that will protect the actual wasteboard on this CNC machine. And of course, I use the glue and the tape method to hold that foam down. On the project itself, this is that 1/2-inch plywood, and again, I'm going to use the glue and the tape method. I'm only putting down 2 pieces of tape. Even though this is a large project, this is plenty. Too many times people really overuse the glue and tape method, and it's just not necessary. Please note, I'm only putting down 1 thin bead of the glue on this tape. It doesn't take a lot of the glue. So again, 1 little bead of the glue, and then I'm going to take the accelerator and spray it on the other pieces of tape that's on the project board itself. And again, you don't need a lot. If you use too much, it's not going to work as well as if you use just a small amount of the accelerator. So then I'm just going to flip it over, put it down in place, and I'm going to line that bottom left-hand corner on exactly my XY0 work position. And that's going to be the home position for this project. Next, I just press it down, just hold it for a few seconds, and it is ready to go. That's all that's necessary. That's just how easy it is to be able to use the glue and the tape method. The next step is to be able to home the machine on the Z-axis. And I'm using just this little probe to be able to do that. That will set the Z-axis so that it gives me the proper height above the project board itself. And then now I'll move it down to that bottom left-hand corner. I already loaded the file into the OpenBuild software, so all that's left is just to hit Run Job. And as you can see, it's starting to cut out the circles first. After completing all of the circles, it's going to move and cut on the inside of this letter. Once that is done, as you can see here, it's going to directly move to the outside of the letter and begin cutting it out. I set this up where it would actually cut on 3 different passes. Could I have been more aggressive? Probably so. This machine can handle it. But I wanted to be able to try to have the minimum amount of tear out on the plywood. And remember, I'm using an upcut bit rather than the downcut bit. But once it's all finished, it moves back to that home position. And all I'm going to do now is just move the gantry out of the way so I can have access to the project itself. Just to show you how well this glue and tape method holds, I'm using a putty knife to be able to get underneath it and then I can start lifting it off. And this thing was not going to move at all during the cutting. It holds extremely well. Now that I have it removed, I'm going to take a saw and cut these tabs, because yes, I did use the tabs so that nothing would move, since again I only used 2 pieces of the tape to be able to secure the project. Well, here's the finished letter O, and it looks great. It will require just a little bit of sanding to be able to clean up the edges. Here's a look at several of the letters that I have cut out and sanded just a little bit to clean up the edges. And I think they look fantastic. They're all ready now to be able to move on to the next step. For this next group of letters, I decided to use a larger piece of the plywood to be able to put 4 letters on at a time to be able to cut them out. And the process is exactly the same. I'm going to select all of the circles and cut those out first, and then I'm going to set it up where the R needs to be cut on the inside, and then everything else is going to be cut on the outside. So still, again, it's going to take 3 different tool paths to be able to cut this out. So I'm going to reset all of the tool paths, and then I'm going to show you exactly how this is going to cut out. So you can see the circles, then the inner cut of the R, and then the outer cut of the rest of the letters. Very simple, very straightforward, and it's consistent, the same process each time. So now I have all of the 3 tool paths. I'm going to select all of them. We'll save the tool paths. Now, of course, I use the thumb drive to save all of my tool paths. That way I don't take up space on the computer. Plus, of course, I can take that thumb drive anywhere and to be able to load it into a computer to be able to bring up the file again. So here's a look at the letters almost completely done. This is the last of the letters being cut out, and now the machine is going back to the home position. Having a machine this size to be able to cut out this many letters at once is really a wonderful situation and a huge time saver. And I did use the clamps this time to be able to hold everything down, just to be able to show you that you can use multiple methods to be able to hold down your projects. This plywood is 48 inches by 35 inches, so you can see it's a good sized piece of material to be able to cut out these letters. The next step is to take a full sheet of plywood, and I'm going to cut the strips that I need to be able to go around all of the letters itself. Now I've made these 3 1/4 inches. That gives me plenty of width to be able to take care of that bottom reveal as well as that top reveal. Being able to cut out a 4x8 sheet of plywood by myself does take a little bit of planning, and of course I use the outfeed tables to be able to support the plywood as I'm cutting it. And that makes all the difference in the world. The outfeed table that I have on the right is a portable table that I can use and for many different applications in the shop, not just an outfeed table whenever I need it. And of course that makes it where it completely supports the plywood, and I don't have to manhandle it, if you will. Plus the dust guard and the dust collector that I have on the saw blade itself makes it where my hands are ensured to be far away from that blade. I'm going to need multiple strips of this wood to be able to have enough to be able to take care of all the different letters that I need to put this on. I'm going to use the miter saw to cut out the majority of these little sections of the wood. As far as the angle, most of them are going to be at a 22.5 degrees, and of course some of them are just cut on a regular 90-degree angle. It just depends on the letter and what stage of that letter that I'm cutting on. The actual assembly is very straightforward. Now I'm having a piece of plywood at the bottom underneath these letters to be able to give me that 1/2 inch space that I want for that back reveal. Remember, that's going to protect the wires. I'm of course using the glue and the nails to be able to hold this on. Now I'm going to be using a 1-inch nail to be able to put these together. Now this letter L, all it requires is just a 90-degree cut. This is very easy and very straightforward. The nice thing about it is a lot of this can get cut out at one time. Those little 3-inch blocks on each side of the letters, I can cut out all of those at once. The two sides of the L on the vertical part, they're the same size. The only thing that's different is this bottom strip that I'm putting on right now, and its adjacent top strip that's going to go on. Those are going to be two different sizes. Now just to use a little pencil line here, just to make sure that I nail correctly and don't miss and come out either the top or the bottom. I want it to be right in the center, and this is the easiest way to be able to do it. That little pencil line, not required, but it's definitely a help. Many of these individual pieces I cut and stacked up so that I would have them available to be able to make the time much shorter on being able to assemble everything. On the pieces that I had to cut individual, well, that's what I did. I just measured and cut them individually. The wiring itself is actually very straightforward. I have the wire coming in the bottom on one side, and then they go from one socket to the next and so on all the way through. Now what I do is I lay out the wire exactly where I want it, put a little mark on the center point, and then that way I know exactly where this socket is going to go. And you can see the wire just lays right across the top of this little socket. The cap itself is actually very straightforward. The little clip I don't need, so I'm just going to cut that off. And all I'm left with is the cap itself. And that will push down and push the wire right into those little metal prongs, and that will hold it securely with that cap in place. Now to be able to secure it, I found the easiest way to do it is just use a hammer, and all I'm doing is just pressing that down to be able to have those little metal pins pierce the insulation on the wire, and it will hold it in place. Then I'll take the stapler and just staple the wire on each side of this socket. And that way it's secure. It holds it exactly where it needs to be held, and then I'll just move to the next one. Once completed, all I need to do is be able to put a male and a female onto the end of the wire. Now this wire is roughly 1 foot long on each side of the letters, and that way I can plug all the different letters in together and I have plenty of spacing. These little plugs for the male and female do the same thing. They just literally lay across the top of the plug, and then this little cap slides on, presses that wire down into those little metal prongs, and that's it. And it holds very well. I'll put a link in the description for all these different components to be able to complete the wiring, and it'll be listed in the description below. Once I have all the wiring completed, I put the bulbs in and test it out. And wow, I think this looks absolutely fantastic. The marquee letters are fun to make, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. I think this is going to be really great to have at this upcoming event for this weekend. Having these marquee letters will be a wonderful addition to the decorations for this event. Thanks a lot for watching this video today. It was a lot of fun making these marquee letters, and I can't wait to be able to go to the event and be able to have all of these lights working. Now, if you like this video, by all means, give me a thumbs up. By the way, hit that little subscribe button down there. Really does help. And leave me a comment and let me know what you think about how these marquee letters turned out. If you like the design with that protective area on the back that protects the wiring, and just let me know what your thoughts are on these different letters. And did it help to be able to show you exactly how I designed these letters in the VCarve Pro? So until next time, I look forward to hearing from you in the comments, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. So for now, bye-bye everyone. See you real soon.